Hello, welcome to my presentation. My name is Erin Music. I'm a registered psychologist. I'm located in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, and I am a Shaw student, so with the Sexual Health Alliance on the sex therapy track, and this is actually my final project submission. So I'm at the end of my studies, and so I'm going to take you just through actually what I decided to do for my final project. And as you can see here, the title, Investigating Impacts of Being or Becoming a Sexuality Professional on Intimate Partner Relationships. So there's my topic. So we're going to slide into here. I'm presenting on my iPad, so this is new, so hopefully everything goes good and it's working the way that it's supposed to. So yeah, it's always a bit of a technology thing that we have to figure out. So my research question, what I was going for. So for this project, I set out seeking to understand the unique challenges and opportunities that pursuing the professional path of becoming a sex therapist or sex educator have created for students and professionals in the field within their intimate partner relationships. So I basically decided to kind of look at that from a couple different perspectives. I wanted to see if I could actually chat with professionals themselves, obviously in terms of their own experiences, and also if I could potentially connect with some partners of those professionals. And so that was what I set out to do. So questions about sexual attitudes, opinions, experiences, behaviors, all that kind of stuff were asked within intimate partner relationships. I also asked about fantasies, desires, their interests in sex, their experiences with sexual shame, and about challenging feelings, situations, and conflict that they may have experienced with their intimate partners. I did also ask a bit around other relationships outside of intimate partner relationships, but the vast majority of focus has been on intimate partner relationships for these sexuality professionals. So in terms of why I decided to investigate this topic, really in part driven by my own personal experiences while studying to become a sex therapist, just because I was, of course, just observing myself and observing changes within myself in terms of my own attitudes, my own communication, my own comfort and openness with sexual topics as I was learning and being exposed to new people and new practices and new ideas, and then just sort of noticing how that was showing up in my relationship, both positive and sometimes more challenging impacts, right? And so I got to thinking, it can't just be me, right? Of course, and of course it wasn't, but I thought that it would be a neat experience to be able to sort of bring these topics to light and have some discussions about it. So 2 surveys as a result were developed, one for sexuality professionals themselves or students. So primarily Shaw students would be who I was targeting in terms of having them complete these surveys if they felt so inclined. So anyone that was working towards becoming a sexuality professional. And then the second survey was actually designed for partners of these professionals. So these surveys were distributed through email to supervisees, through clinical supervisors that were through the SHAW program, and it was also made available in several different private Facebook groups that were comprised of sex therapy or sex educator students and other sexuality professionals. Everybody was either Canadian or American, so just to kind of give you some of that demographic stuff I'll chat about in a minute. Surveys were electronically submitted and completed. So a total of 19 sex therapy and educator students or professionals completed the survey, and then I got 5 partners of these professionals who also submitted surveys. So obviously this is not a formal ethics board reviewed supervised research endeavor. This is quite an informal inquiry, but nonetheless, this is something that I do think there's some neat findings, that we could look at and potentially, kind of consider for those that are in the research realm of the world, if that's something that they wanted to dig into more, or again, some of the findings that I do present here may echo research that does exist already, that some maybe I am aware of and some maybe not. So just putting that out there. Obviously other limitations, sample sizes are limited, particularly partners. Partners, I only got 5. And that is better than not having any, but I certainly would have liked to have had more partner participation if possible. Another limitation, access to participants was limited to those that I could access on social media or through email or through kind of mutual contacts, that kind of thing, right? Something else to consider is that partner participation may be filtered through the sexuality professionals ask of them. So, I don't know how it was presented. It was like, hey, can you do this? Or, I wasn't able to sort of pitch it myself necessarily, right? So it's hard to say as to, was it presented, was it asked, how was it asked, and that may impact a partner's willingness to participate, right, or not. So also potential for if there's partners that were together and now are no longer together, so that if there's been changes of relationship status throughout, then I might, of course, not have access necessarily to previous partners. And I am surveying therapists, so I can also just recognize that, as a group, we may be, higher in agreeableness and conscientiousness. And so we also kind of appreciate, being able to participate and help people's research endeavors because we have also done them ourselves. So I might have a more receptive audience in therapists. Partners may not be in the same sort of kind of conscientiousness or agreeableness or in the same field. And so that may impact willingness to participate as well. Okay, so my goal in doing this basically is I'm not pursuing any formal publication of these results, but it's my hope that in gathering and presenting this information, I can create a resource for students. I'd really love for this information to assist students so that they're feeling just supported, that they're feeling validated, that they're feeling normal, right? So as we're studying to become sex therapists, and for those that are working in the field, we really see that this am I normal is the number one question that clients will often ask when they seek sex therapy or education. And so of course, those of us studying in the same field have the same questions, right? So it's is this normal? This is feeling weird, or this is hard, or, these are some of the challenges that I'm finding right now. And just knowing that you're not alone in some of those things, right? Even in this small sample. So getting to the data. So this is the demographics just to give you an idea. So the 19 surveys that I had of sexuality professionals or students. So I had 19 altogether, 7 being students, 12 being professionals in the field. Those professionals had an average of 4 years in practice. Gender-wise, I left that field open so people were able to define and use the terminology that fit best for them. So the majority of individuals identified as female of respondents, with in second highest category was male. So we had 68% female, 21% male. And then we did have one person who identified as femme and another one who identified as non-binary. Age-wise, we had a pretty, I think, good kind of range. So really between ages of 25 and 54, with a slightly higher number in the youngest category here of 25 to 34 years. Relationship status of those folks that did participate, 50% were monogamous. I did leave this field again open so that people could just decide how they wanted to kind of define this. So 2 out of the 19 people responded saying that their relationship was open. 5 out of the 19, so 26%, had indicated polyamorous, and then 3 out of 19 had indicated just other, with no other sort of information about that. And length of relationship, we had kind of a whole range, again, from 0 to 2 years up to one person that actually had 25 plus years, so a long-term relationship. And most being, again, in our sort of 0 to 5 years was the majority of respondents. And then sexual orientation, again, this was an open field, so allowing for people to kind of just indicate however they chose to in terms of identification. So we had 42% that did identify as heterosexual, 26% identified as bisexual, and then we had several just one individuals kind of identifying as a variety of different things. So pansexual, evolving, lesbian, hetero, flexible, queer, or undefined. Okay, so those are the folks that completed the survey. So I'm just going to go through some of the key highlights and some of the things that were most frequently endorsed in terms of the survey responses, and some of them that, I'm particularly, excited about. So basically I decided that kind of high frequency or higher frequency items, 9 out of 19 or above, which is pretty close to 50%. So sort of highlighting that's a fairly, frequently cited thing that was going on for people. So experiencing sexual variety and experimentation with techniques, positions, or practices within the relationship. So 58% of sexuality professionals indicated that had increased since being in their program or since pursuing. Willingness to be a more open sexually increased. 79% of respondents indicated that. So that's a pretty cool finding and definitely a what we would assume to be a positive result of being a sex therapist or having trained to become a sex therapist or a sex educator. Additionally, communication regarding sexual practices, preferences, fantasies, desires, again, increased. 74% of respondents indicated that was an increase for them. So again, just really seeing a lot of some good stuff already, highlighting here some positive results of studying and learning in this field. The frequency of solo sexual activity increased in 47% of respondents, and a desire for sexual activities also increased in 47%. So those ones that are around that 47%, we didn't see a whole lot in the decreased category. So the vast majority of were either increased or stayed the same. So that would be the other kind of finding that's there. So a few other ones here, and again, you can, kind of read through some of these, but a couple big ones that stand out. Sexual confidence and comfort with sexual activities increased. 95% of respondents indicated, and the other one, I believe, said that it had stayed the same. So that's just a really neat finding, I think, to be able to say, and I certainly would echo that has been true for my experience, definitely as well. Experiencing a pleasure and an increased experience of pleasure and sexual satisfaction, solo or partnered, a result of things you've learned. So 89% of professionals or students indicated that was true for them. So again, a really nice positive finding there. And we do have a couple of others here on the one side here, both at 68%. So level of sexual assertiveness increasing, so initiating sex more often and being more direct in sexual wants and needs, and also feeling accepted and supported by their partner or partners regarding desired practices, preferences, or fantasies. So 68%, again, so a really good proportion of people reporting quite positive results of being a sexuality professional. And a few others on the other side there around just, again, increased motivation to meet partners' needs and frequency or intensity of sexual fantasies increasing in almost half the respondents. So a couple other ones that I did include on here that were definitely a little bit less, and they're like not the positive ones as much, but I wanted to make sure to include them just because it is still, I think, a significant finding. Our fourth one over here, we've got expressions of jealousy, insecurity, or fear regarding learning from your partner. So this is still a third of people who are reporting that this is something that they have experienced, right? So this is one of those things that is obviously creating some challenge at times, at least in our intimate relationships. And additionally, 42% indicated an increased desire discrepancy between themselves and their partners, them being the higher desire partner. So just an interesting sort of trend that we're seeing, and I think, again, we're seeing like higher levels of sexual assertiveness, more comfort, more openness, more confidence, all that kind of stuff. And so with that, then we're also seeing potentially the higher desire, and then that's creating some discrepancy within partnerships. Although potentially there could have been a drop off in desire on the partner's part as well, which may not be related. So so experiencing a change in what turns you on. So things that you fantasize about or desire that you did not previously. So 14 out of 19 people indicated that was true for them, which again that's a lot of people. So, and again, just echoing some of what I was just speaking about. So expressions of excitement, interest, or curiosity regarding your learning from your partner. Again, 11 out of 19 indicated that. So, so I think, again, as we're starting to see primarily, positive impacts for sure, but we do have a few that are more challenging here that I wanted to note. The last one, censoring or holding yourself back from stating an opinion or sharing knowledge of sexuality with your partner. Again, was, I think we're at 9. Yeah, just so that 47%. So almost half, right, of sometimes going, that's not a topic that maybe we should be talking about, or this is something that causes conflict or tension. And so finding that they need to sort of stop themselves sometimes from talking. And then a few other more of the more difficult challenges, right? So imposter syndrome, feeling like you're helping other people and giving them guidance in sexual issues, but then you can't solve the sexual issue in your own life, right? So that was a 12 out of 19. Frustration with your partner for them not being as excited about sex and sexual topics as you. So that's at 8. Sometimes slipping into therapist or educator mode with your partner. So feeling pressure to address or educate regarding a sexual issue with your partner. So 14 out of 19. So that's a pretty high highly endorsed item there. And again, like I think just slipping into therapist mode or feeling like we have to school our partners, that's going to create some stress for both parties, right? So experience of partner appearing to feel threatened or by sexual knowledge, or them saying so, and then pressure and expectation from yourself to be an expert, both at a 7 out of 19. So again, not as high as some of the other ones, but nonetheless, an experience that we're certainly seeing in at least a third of respondents. Yeah, a few more to highlight. So again, I asked lots of questions, as you can see, so I was able to get some really good information. So just a couple key ones here that are higher frequency ones, but again, not to diminish the importance of the ones that were less frequent, because again, they are important, right? So some of the jealousy, insecurity, sexual attraction to colleagues, fellow students, or supervisors, comparison or insecurity, right? So those are things that a good number of people were reporting. But the positive here of feeling supported by your partner regarding your relationship, and this is partner or partners, regarding your relationship or interactions with sex therapy colleagues, fellow students, or supervisors, 74% had endorsed that. And increased curiosity regarding sexual practices or communities that some of your colleagues or fellow students or supervisors may be part of, that perhaps you have not been, 84%, right? So again, just like exposure to new ideas, new people, new practices is something that we're seeing a lot. So overall impact, so being a sex therapist in training, what impact overall has it had on your relationship? So 47% indicated that it had overall improved, and then 42% had said it was a mixture of positive and negative. So I think that's a pretty good mixture. I think that we are seeing definitely more positive than negative, but I don't want to diminish the fact that some of those struggles have been there that have created that mixed result. Did you anticipate any negative impacts coming into the field? So 58% of respondents said no, that they did not anticipate. 42% indicated that they did. So, I think when we look at, that there was, 42% of people indicating that it has been a mixture of positive and negative, it sounds like for some of those people, it maybe caught them by surprise, potentially, right? Because there was more people that did not anticipate that there would be any negative impacts. And then just looking at the outside of your intimate relationships, I did just ask a couple questions on here. So 84% of respondents indicated that becoming a sex therapist or educator or other sexuality professional had impacted their relationships outside of their intimate partnerships, with some of the most frequently cited items being that people around you are seeking sexual advice, right? And again, that could be good or bad depending on who it is, I suppose, but a lot of people talked about that. More sexual openness and communication regarding sexual topics, 74%. And then almost half did indicate, sort of feeling like, and this was my terminology, but sort of like feeling like a bit of a buzzkill, quote unquote. So finding, other people finding something funny that maybe you don't, because it's based on misinformation or stereotypes, right? Or feeling frustrated, with people making maybe assumptions or basing opinions on not great information, right? So that was something that was there as well. So I did ask for some people to make comments as well, and so they were able to just be able to offer a bit more kind of filling in the blanks outside of some of the items that I was speaking of through the survey. And so just a few to share here. So being the higher desire partner for the past year or more. Things I've learned, for example, that men are more prone to habituation and seek out novelty sexually have made me feel insecure, especially in regard to his lower desire, where I may not have attributed his lower desire to myself before. I think I do more so now. So that is a struggle with that number that we did see as well around fairly frequent occurrence of becoming the higher desire partner within their relationship. Positives that someone is noting here. Positives have been that I feel more confident and knowledgeable, and I'm way less judgmental about others' sexual practices, and also way more accepting of pornography. So that's a positive note for this person. Another one, definite increase in compassion for my asexual partner. So yeah, just really deepening understanding with more knowledge and more exposure, right? A negative, I commonly feel frustration with misinformation I hear from family and friends. So that would be, again, speaking to the last slide. As someone sharing just an experience of the ending of a relationship. So I was a sex therapy student when my relationship started. He appeared to be on board until I began networking with a local dungeon. Religion and quote unquote perversion became a big part of the contention when discussing taboo sexual topics, which led to criticism toward me as a human and my spiritual path. So the relationship ended. But this person really is, I love this career path and would prefer to share it with someone who isn't judgmental, right? So that's a finding too, is that like some of these things are negative, quote unquote, right? But at the same time, the strain that it puts on a relationship at times is maybe then kind of indicative that there's a mismatch there, right, between your desired career path and your maybe changing and evolving attitudes and values, and that those maybe aren't lining up with the partner that you would have started out with, right? So and then this last one, I think has been, it is a neat, just again, change, in the relationship status, and a positive as well. So I think that over the past few years, my desire discrepancy with my spouse has grown in part due to her going into premenopause. I feel that my training and her support around our open poly relationship has helped me adjust. I only occasionally go on dates or am sexual with other partners, but that has really helped me grieve the loss of much of my sexual relationship with my spouse. Yeah, so I'm really grateful that, people felt like they could just be really open about their experiences and some of the growth and also some of the challenges that they faced in these comments. And this just, again, speaks to other items that, certainly I could have surveyed on, right? Because there's so much to this topic, that is there to explore. So some key takeaways from this survey. So we're seeing way less sexual shame reported by respondents, way more sexual openness, more confidence, and more assertiveness, more sexual pleasure and curiosity, a change in what turns participants on. Overall impacts were reported as positive or neutral. Challenges centered around sometimes slipping into therapist mode with partners and struggling with imposter syndrome at times. And most reported feeling supported by partners in their sexuality and work. So that's really great, right? That we as sexuality professionals can be open and communicative and feel supported and accepted by our partners, both professionally and obviously personally and sexually, right? So I was really happy to see that. Okay, so this will be a quicker section, obviously, because I only had 5 people, but nonetheless, just giving you a quick rundown on demographics of the 5 partners that did complete surveys. So we had 3 males and 2 individuals that did not identify a gender completing the survey. 2 identified as married, 1 dating, and 1 common law. 4 out of the 5 were monogamous relationships. The 5th one that just identified as other. Sexual orientation, heterosexual, 4 out of the 5. Heteroflexible was 1 out of 5. And then we had, again, an age ranging between 25 and 64, actually, with just 2 in that 35 to 44 range. And the majority of the relationships in that 3 to 5 year range for the length of time that they had been with the partner that they were completing the survey about. So key findings. So out of this, it was 3 or higher for responses. So 3 out of 5. So from the partner's perspective, their willingness to be more open sexually increased 80%. So 4 out of 5. Their partner's willingness to be more open sexually increased 100%. All 5 out of 5 endorsed that. Partners' communication, their communication regarding sexual preferences, practices, fantasies, or desires increased 4 out of 5. So just cool, as we're going through, we're highlighting that, a lot of the things that the partners are endorsing are being reflected as well in the surveys themselves from the sexuality professionals. So they are saying, yes, my communication has increased. Yes, I'm more open, and partners are then echoing the same. Experience of sexual variety and experimentation with techniques, positions, or practices within the relationship increasing. So 60% or 3 out of 5 endorse that. And sexual confidence and comfort with sexual topics increased as well, a 3 out of 5. Also, just of note that it, for the most part, we were seeing either that they had increased or stayed the same. So we didn't have a lot in the way of like reporting decreasing necessarily in these findings. So a few others just to highlight. So judgment or discomfort with others' sexual practices or preferences decreased in 3 out of 5. So just feeling more open. Your own experience of sexual shame, insecurity, or discomfort decreasing, again, 3 out of 5. in learning about and applying specific things sexually that you've learned from your partner, the experience overall has been positive. 3 out of 5 had indicated that it was positive, or a mixture of positive and negative, 1 out of 5. One person did indicate that it was more negative than positive. So that finding is there. And 60% or 3 out of 5 indicated that frequency of sex, type of sex they're having, or how pleasurable sex is with their partners, satisfaction is increased. So a mixture here again of really good stuff, I think, here around, again, just reduction in shame, just feeling more comfortable, experiencing more pleasure, kind of thing. And then just a few more. So all of these were endorsed at a 3 out of 5. So their experience of feeling accepted and supported by their partners regarding their sexuality, feeling excited, interested, curious regarding their partner's learning. And this again echoes, I think, what partners, the professionals themselves were reporting, feeling supported and accepted by their partners too. Increased confidence regarding their partner's knowledge and comfort with sexuality and what they've learned from them, and feeling supportive of their partners regarding their relationships or interactions with colleagues, students, supervisors, that kind of thing. So overall, we had 3 out of the 5 were definitely indicating that that overall they were down, they were supportive, they were happy that their partners were pursuing this path or working in this path. Again, some of the rest of these items generally were either that they had increased or that there was no change. So there wasn't, again, a lot in this around that they had decreased necessarily or had negative impacts. So overall, having a partner who's a sexuality professional, 2 out of 5 indicated an overall positive effect, and 3 out of 5 indicated a neutral impact. So that, they didn't necessarily see it as good or bad, or that it necessarily maybe had a huge, impact, or, and so again, there's some limitations around, like, we don't know the status, like what was going on before, the sexuality, the person became the professional, like some of that pre-data, of course, is limited. So who knows, right? If they already had a particularly sexually open relationship and a sexually open partner, then having a neutral impact would make sense, right? So those are a few blanks that we can't necessarily fill in. A funny finding, so none of the partners reported any impacts on their partner's other relationships as a result of being a sexuality professional, but 84% of the professionals themselves reported that indeed their relationships were impacted. So just something that, like, as a partner, maybe just not being necessarily aware of those impacts, or are the professionals not sharing those impacts? I'm not sure, but I just thought it was quite a big difference between, like, no, their relationships aren't impacted, and all of us as professionals are like, oh yes, they are. So so that was kind of a funny thing. Key takeaways of this small sample, obviously, but impacts were reported, were very positive overall. Partners overall reported very little in the way of negative impacts or experiences. We see some of these mirrored in the first survey, so less sexual shame, more sexual openness, more confidence, and partners overall, again, reported feeling supportive of their partner's education and work. So that is very encouraging. So what I learned, right? So what I learned is that being a sex educator, therapist, or other professional, within this field has generally a very positive impact on intimate relationships, especially in the areas of increasing sexual openness, confidence and pleasure, and reducing sexual shame and judgment. That sexuality professionals overall felt supported and accepted by their partners in their work and also in their sexuality, and this was echoed by their partners as well. That when challenges arose, there were lots of ways to navigate them and get support, most often through communication with partners, but as well through research, therapy, and supervision. And the main areas of challenge that were identified by professionals were imposter syndrome, slipping into the therapist educator mode, and some others, including pressure to be an expert sexually, and partners reporting jealousy or insecurity. So some other things just to kind of pay attention to, and again, maybe some other smart folks are already doing some of this or have done some of this, but just kind of a neat observation. So many sexuality professionals described a change in what turned them on, and quite a few reported increased desire discrepancy, with them being the higher desire partner. And then, of course, we saw, increased sexual, openness, assertiveness, confidence, comfort, communication, all that kind of stuff, right? So is, just the idea that exposure to new sexual ideas, practices, materials, like in a supportive, affirming, and sex positive environment can actually facilitate more sexual desire and permission to explore these ideas, even if it's just in fantasy, right? Because we did see, again, I think I believe it was 14 out of 19 off the top of my head right now, that had indicated that they had experienced a change in what turns them on. So I think that's an interesting finding to be like, oh, okay, what's that about, right? Is it just an exposure thing? Is it a permission thing? Is it a reduction in sexual shame? Maybe all three, right? But something to kind of be curious about. If I were to do it again, it would have been nice to have more profile data. So like, why did you get into sex therapy or sex education? How open sexually were you before entering the field? Are people, who were already more open, curious, and interested in sex more likely to get into the field in the first place? Like, is that something that is, impacting this? I think it'd be neat to also explore like personal reasons why people have maybe come in. Like, is it about overcoming their own sexual shame or trauma? Is it to kind of deal with a religious sex shaming upbringing? Like, what else might be going on here, right? Is it influence from partner? Did they meet a sexuality, professional themselves and have a really good therapy experience and then decide to go into it? Or, just what were some of the personal drivers? And then how much of the changes that they experienced do they attribute to their education and training versus other factors, right? Because we can't necessarily isolate that like this for sure is a direct sort of causation of all of these improvements that people are experiencing. And then what else has their training led them to? So new communities, new practices, new interests, that kind of thing, right? So more the outcome of, the results, I guess, of this kind of stuff in their own sexuality, that beyond sort of what I was able to survey. So in thinking about speaking to students, and just echoing my own experience, as well as the information that we have available to us through this very small survey, you can anticipate a variety of different impacts on your intimate relationships as well as with family and friends. There's so much good that comes from learning about sexuality from open, sex positive, ethical, research-based, affirming, and insightful sources like Shaw. So if you are a Shaw student, lucky you, because it's a fabulous program. And this is the kind of information that we need to have out in the world, right? So and just seeing the impact that it has on people, professionally and personally is just really, really cool. Know that if you experience challenges in your relationships, that these are very common. Also know that there's lots of support available, so don't be shy in seeking that out, whether it's through professional consultation, supervision, doing your own therapy, doing your own research, asking questions in groups, like whatever it is, right? And also know that once you know and learn all of this, you can't unknow it. So this journey is a professional one to be sure, but it also has deep personal impacts as well. So reducing your own sexual shame allows your own personal sexual experience to be transformed. And this also allows you to show up as a safe, non-judgmental person for your clients, which of course is the professional goal in all of this. So that is it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that some of the information that I shared, has been helpful for you and interesting for you. Good luck to you in your own learning and professional development journey. I know for me, this sex therapy certification process has been very meaningful and very, really personally, deeply impactful for me, that more than any training or learning really that I've ever done. So I'm very, very grateful for this experience. And I hope that it can offer you some of that same just power, that transformational power and just like deep learning and awareness and community that you get to be part of. So this is me. This is where you can find me. If you're interested in connecting, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.